Hello everyone. In this video, I'm going to try to talk briefly about parenting and talk about some of the parenting styles that they talked about in the book. And we all have had our own experience of being a child and being parented, and then also some of you may have had experience parenting your own children and realize how challenging it is. So Baumrein in 1967 studied different parenting styles, and she came up with 4 different styles of parenting. And authoritarian is one that we all might be fairly familiar with. It's kind of an older fashioned um, type of parenting. Do it because I said so. And there's no explanation of why. There's lots of rules, lots of demands of children, and very little sensitivity to the kids' feelings. And/or there seems to be no need to explain why you want something done. That's authoritarian. Authoritative is really kind of the more modern style of parenting, where parents have reasonable demands of their kids. They're consistent, they have rules, they enforce those rules, but they're sensitive, they want to hear the child's side of things, and they also are willing to explain why you want them to do something the way that you want it done. Permissive is where parents are just very permissive. They have few rules, few demands, and they give kids too much freedom, and this can cause problems too. So it sounds kind of great, right? But it can cause kids that are not very responsible as adults, and not really prepare kids necessarily for adulthood. Think about the world of work and the world of school. If your parents are really permissive and you go in and you have a real authoritarian boss, you might have a lot of trouble dealing with that situation. And then, of course, neglectful parents, where there's just no rules. Parents are not involved, they're not sensitive to the kids' needs. So those are the 4 different styles of parenting that she came up with. And she said there's 2 different dimensions. How accepting are the parents of their child, and how responsive are they to the child? So the styles of parenting that are really responsive and accepting of their kids are the authoritative parents, and these are the real more modern parents. And then the permissive parents. The parental demandingness and the demandingness of control over their children is very high in authoritarian parents, and it's also very high in, wait a minute, authoritative parents. Oh, okay. So authoritative, even though they're modern and they're more sensitive and concerned about their kids, they still demand control, and they still, consistently enforce rules. So there are rules. Whereas if you look at permissive parents and neglectful parents, there's very little demands on that child. So those are the 4 different styles of parenting. So which style is best? We all kind of grew up with an authoritarian style mostly, and hopefully an authoritative style. So the authoritative style is definitely the gold standard. We want to have warm, responsive parenting towards our children. We want to develop a secure attachment with them. We want them to have high self-esteem. We want them to feel capable and competent in their schoolwork. We want them to have good social skills and good friendships. And we want them to have a strong sense of morality as well, and just have a good sense of psychological well-being. And we know that parental acceptance is really key to emotional health. So that's really important. So authoritative parents are kind and accepting, but they do exert authority and give guidance to their children. So children need rules and they need guidance, and sometimes they need consequences for their actions. But they definitely need kindness and acceptance as well. So children of authoritative parents are the ones that are most well adjusted. So children do best with what we've heard, love and limits. We want to show that we love them and we accept them, even if they mess up and they do something dumb or something bad. We still love who they are, but we just need to change some of their behaviors. There are a lot of parental misconceptions about what kids are capable of at different ages, and oftentimes parents can get really angry and frustrated frustrated and even abusive towards children because they don't recognize that what they're expecting of that child is not possible for that child to give them. So it's something to think about in a lot of our parenting classes. A lot of new parents are offered parenting classes because we want to prevent a child abuse, and we want to help parents understand what's reasonable to expect of a child at a particular age. So there was a study done in 1997 called 0 to 3 that found that many parents really don't understand child development and have really unrealistic expectations of their children. 60% of new parents and grandparents believe that you can spoil an infant, and I think many of you might think that as well, but you truly cannot spoil an infant with attention. You're not going to make their behavior worse. If they are crying, they really do need you, and they need you to respond to that as well. So you cannot spoil an infant. Once they get a little bit older, a little bit more aware of what's going on, then you can look at maybe setting some limits, but really like 6 months or so is when you can start to see about letting them go to sleep at night on their own, and letting them cry it out, I guess, a little bit too. And that's where you can sort of expect to get more sleep around 6 months or so as well. 37% believe it's okay to spank a child under 2. A child under 2 does not understand spanking, and they don't understand why you want to hurt them at that age. And it really can be traumatic for a 2-year-old child, and it doesn't teach them anything. It doesn't teach them the right behavior. So I'm actually an opponent of spanking at all. I've raised my son. He's 19 now. I've never spanked him. And I think it's not necessary to spank a child. There's a lot of psychologists that also believe that spanking is unnecessary. That doesn't mean that there aren't consequences for bad behavior or mistakes that are made, but spanking doesn't really teach the child what the right behavior is. And so it's much better to explain to that child what the right behavior is, give them a consequence for the behavior that we don't like, and encourage them to do the right behavior, and you're going to get a much better response than you get from spanking, because spanking really hurts the parent-child relationship. 51% of parents expect a 10-month-old to share a toy. 10-month-olds don't really have that ability, so they're expecting their kids to have social skills that they're just not capable of yet at 10 months old, and they might feel that that 10-month-old is selfish when the 10-month-old has no concept of that at all. 26% expect that a 3-year-old can sit for an hour, and that's so not true. A 3-year-old cannot sit for an hour. I can't remember. Timeout is a minute per year, so 3-minute timeout is like an eternity for kids. And if you imagine as an adult sitting in a corner for 3 minutes, that would be an eternity for us too. But to expect a 3-year-old to sit at the table for dinner for an hour without moving or getting up around is not possible for that child. Parents sometimes will come up with this idea that kids are plotting against them, but it's impossible for a 1-year-old and probably for a 2- and 3-year-old as well. So there's a lot of parental misconceptions about child development, and it's really important for parents to understand child development and what kids are capable of at different ages to really prevent different forms of abuse, because parents just often expect things that aren't possible of their children. Thanks for listening.